Had you ever seen a fight break out in the comments section? Let me tell you, there's nothing like it. I'm here today with an intense story that will make you question everything you see, good and evil, us and them. Trust me, you won't see this coming. So let's dive in. We open on a gritty city. Neon lights reflecting off slick streets. Rain pours down, mixing with the exhaust fumes hanging in the air. Sirens echo through the narrow alleys. Blood trickles down his forehead, staining the pavement crimson. His breaths come in shallow gasps. He's wearing a suit, but it's drenched, clinging to his emaciated frame. His eyes flutter open, clouded with pain. He tries to sit up, wincing as his head hits the wet bricks. As the man regains his bearings, we hear his thoughts, memories flashing before our eyes. Images of him striding confidently through bustling city streets, rallying crowds, shaking hands, his face beaming with purpose. We hear the roar of the crowd chanting his name. Jordan, Jordan, Jordan. He remembers the adulation, the sense of unwavering support and shared purpose. The camera lingers on a close-up of his bloodied face, emphasizing the stark contrast between the man he once was and the state he now finds himself in. We pull back to see the extent of his surroundings. He's in a desolate alley strewn with garbage and graffiti. A broken beer bottle glistens menacingly in the dim light filtering through the buildings. This wasn't how he envisioned spending his evening. It was supposed to be a celebratory dinner followed by a peaceful walk home. But his phone was dead, his ride had bailed on him, and he'd taken a shortcut. That's when they jumped him. 3 of them, masked, menacing, armed with crowbars. He tried to run, but it was too late. One of them had swung, catching him off guard. Pain lanced through his head, and he crumpled to the ground. The next thing he remembers is the taste of copper in his mouth and a searing pain in his side. Memories fragmented, disjointed, like pieces of a shattered mirror reflecting a distorted reality. The muggers had taken his wallet, his phone, even his shoes. And as they ran off, leaving him bleeding and battered in their wake, a single thought echoed in his mind: help. And yet no one came. A police car drove by, its red and blue lights flashing, momentarily illuminating the grim scene before disappearing around the corner. The sound of its siren fading into the distance like a mournful cry. Even a pastor, yes, a literal pastor, stepped out of a coffee shop across the street, looked at him for a moment, then turned away without a word, and disappeared into the shadows. He was left alone in the rain, gasping for breath, his body racked with coughs that brought up more blood. His vision blurred, his ears rang. He could feel himself slipping away, the cold seeping into his bones, stealing his strength, clouding his mind. And then just when all hope seemed lost, a savior appeared. A figure clad in a hoodie pulled tight, face covered, obscured from view, emerged from the maze of buildings, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. They stopped beside him, kneeling beside the wounded man. Without hesitation, they tore off their hoodie, wrapping it around his head to stem the flow of blood. Then with gentle urgency, they dialed 911. The stranger stayed by his side throughout the ordeal, talking to him, reassuring him until the arrival of the ambulance broke through the haze of his pain. The stranger helped load him onto the stretcher, their presence a beacon of hope in the darkness. As the ambulance pulled away, he caught a glimpse of the receding figure, the hood back on, melting into the crowd. He wanted to call out, thank them, but his voice failed him. All he could do was watch as they disappeared, swallowed by the city's embrace. Inside the hospital, hooked up to machines that beeped and blinked rhythmically, he drifted in and out of consciousness. When he finally regained full awareness, his gaze immediately sought out the nurse's station. He needed to know who that person was, the person who'd saved his life, but the nurses were no help. All they knew was that a Good Samaritan had called in the emergency services and stayed until help arrived. The following days were a blur of hospital stays, surgeries, and concerned glances from medical staff. But it was during the quiet hours, when the hum of activity outside his room faded to a dull roar, that he found himself thinking most about the stranger. Who were they? What had compelled them to help him? A few days after the attack, he was finally discharged from the hospital, his body still aching, his spirits low. He went home, dreading the quiet and solitude. That's when he decided to take matters into his own hands. Determined to find the stranger, he scoured through his security footage, hoping to catch a glimpse of the individual who had saved him. Hours turned into days, but his efforts proved fruitless. Just when he was about to give up, he spotted something peculiar. The footage showed a group of people arguing heatedly, their words sharp and cutting like shards of glass. Amidst the chaos, one particular individual caught his eye. The person's face was partially obscured, but there was something about their stance, the way they held themselves, that seemed oddly familiar. With renewed determination, he tracked down the source of the argument, a local community forum. As he scrolled through the thread, his heart skipped a beat. There it was, a picture posted by one of the participants. In the image, several individuals stood together, their faces a mix of anger and defiance, and among them, he saw him. The stranger, whose face had been partially hidden in the video, was standing right there. Overcome with emotion, he reached out, his fingers trembling. He clicked on the profile, hoping to find a way to contact the person. But as he read through the posts, a chill ran down his spine. These were the very people he'd vehemently opposed, the ones he'd labeled as the enemy. Each post was a verbal attack on the government, on the system he represented. Each comment a brick in the wall of division that separated them. And here he was discovering that the person who had saved his life was on the other side of that very same wall. His mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of the selfless savior with the villainous enemy he'd created in his mind. How could someone he so strongly opposed be the one to save him? In the ensuing days, he grappled with this realization, haunted by the irony of the situation. The person he thought was his enemy had shown him kindness and compassion when he needed it the most. As he looked back on the events leading up to that fateful night, he saw now how his actions had contributed to the chasm that divided them. The harsh words he'd spoken, the rallies he'd organized, it all seemed small and petty in the face of what he'd learned that night. With newfound clarity, he began to dismantle the walls he'd built, reaching out across the divide to understand, to connect, to heal. It was a slow and arduous journey, but with each step he took, he felt the weight of misunderstanding lifting, replaced by the dawning realization that maybe the enemy wasn't who he thought he was. He realized that sometimes love looked like crossing a line you swore you'd never cross. And he understood now that sometimes the greatest acts of humanity came from the most unexpected of sources. So ask yourself, who's your Samaritan? Or better yet, who can you be a Samaritan to? Thank you for watching. If this story hit you hard, share it. Someone needs to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.